Can you play D&D without D&D? Plus, a big change to Warhammer Age of Sigmar.
Explain yourself.
Games Workshop is pulling the Beasts of Chaos from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Today, Games Workshop announced that it was retiring a number of miniatures from its Age of Sigmar line to coincide with the launch of the game's new 4th edition. Now, some were pretty predictable, like the Skaven, which are getting an updated line, likely with, again, the launch of 4th edition. But the stunning part of all of this was the removal of a massive chunk of Stormcast Eternals and the removal of the entire Beasts of Chaos army. Now, the Beasts of Chaos will be repackaged and released as part of Warhammer The Old World sometime in the future. Now, while Games Workshop often retires miniatures from its game, it's kind of part of its business model, usually in favor of new revamped miniatures featuring the same unit or an equivalent to a unit. Again, this is all kind of part of their business model. We often don't see entire armies get retired from play. In fact, with the return of the Bretonnians and the Tomb Kings in Warhammer The Old World, the only army that's really been pulled entirely from one of its games are the Squats, which returned in some format a few years ago as the Leagues of Votann, albeit with entirely new miniatures. So the Beasts of Chaos getting pulled from Age of Sigmar is a pretty huge deal, even if players can switch over to a totally different game to continue using those miniatures. Needless to say, Beasts of Chaos players aren't happy about losing their entire army in competitive play. Some other notable removals include the Stormcast Eternals, which are losing 23 different miniatures, including the entire Synchrosact Chamber, which comprises the bulk of their magic users, and the Bone Splitters faction for the Orks war clans. While the Stormcast line is huge, it's probably the biggest in Age of Sigmar, this is still a pretty big loss for some players, and there's a lot of grumbling over the fact that players will need to replace big chunks of their army if they want to keep using it. Some Slave of Darkness miniatures are also getting removed from the game, which again isn't exactly a surprise given they just got a partial refresh via the just released Dark Oath miniatures. Now, if there's a silver lining to this, it's that the changes won't happen immediately. Games Workshop is going to release free rules for all the miniatures affected by these changes, and they'll be legal to play in tournaments until 2025. But this is going to be one of the more controversial moves made by Games Workshop in quite some time.
Well, that sucks!
This week, Wizards of the Coast released a tie-in adventure to the new Dungeons & Dragons LEGO set. The adventure was made for 5th level characters, but sees players confront many of the creatures found in the new LEGO set, including an adult red dragon and a beholder, which, of course, are very deadly enemies for level 5 characters. But what was the most interesting thing about the Chris Perkins written adventure was that it contained a 1-page rule supplement on how to play through the adventure without D&D rules. So, how does a D&D adventure work without D&D? Well, unsurprisingly, there's a lot of hand-waving and simplifications. Initiative is replaced by a set turn order, and minifigures are encouraged to, and I quote this, do whatever activities the player controlling that minifigure wants it to do, subject to the Dungeon Master's approval. Damage is also simplified, with monsters receiving 1 to 3 points of damage depending on what kind of attack they're hit with, 1 point for a level 1 spell or a non-magical weapon, 2 points for a second level spell or a magical weapon, and 3 points for things like a dragon breath weapon attack or level 3 spells. And minifigures are knocked down whenever they take damage. Oh, and replacing armor class is a simple coin toss. If a minifigure is targeted with an attack, they flip a coin, and if the player wins the toss, they take no damage. Minifigures can be knocked down up to 3 times before they're removed from play. Saving throws is also replaced by a coin toss, but losing a saving throw means permanently losing a piece of equipment, or getting knocked down if they have no equipment. Now obviously, this is a rule system meant to be a quick substitute for D&D. It doesn't really sync up well with most D&D adventures, but it does at least allow for a group of kids, teenagers, or even 20-somethings to test out the core concepts of D&D. There's also an emphasis on improv and role-playing, with the players and the DM encouraged to get creative and think outside the box for the new adventure. Yes, most of the rules in this 1-page rule supplement involves combat encounters, but let's be real, that's the thing that requires the most educating and, rules. You don't really need rules to improv. So, does this mean that D&D now has a rules-light system of play? No, almost certainly not. But I wouldn't be surprised to see some version of this system released for free adventures aimed at kids. The system doesn't really require anything to play besides a coin. And I think that honestly, there's probably worse ways to introducing kids to a sprawling rule system like D&D than a one-page summary and some Legos. Now mind you, those kids need to still be able to afford a $350 Lego set, but that's a problem for another day. So, have you bought the Lego D&D set, and have you tried the new D&D Adventure? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.